The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
It is now 8 minutes after 8. Once again, good morning to you. Welcome to the Forum at 8 here on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. Well, this week, the country marks Child Protection Week, and activists are telling us that there are way too many issues of abuse plaguing South Africa's children. This morning, then, we want to identify some of these issues, but also look at some of the solutions that are being suggested. What is it that we are doing as a country? Well, firstly, what is it that we're doing wrong? What is it that we should be doing in order to deal with some of these challenges identified? We'd like to hear what your thoughts are on some of these issues. I mentioned just before the news a story that was carried by the Times a day or two ago it's a heart-wrenching story of a newborn baby dumped in a stormwater drain in Marabastad in Pretoria, but a whole lot of other stories as well. A child found in a freezer, but also there was a story on the East Rand of a mother who stabbed her own child to death. Those are some of the stories that we've been reporting on. Rapes involving, in the main, children who have certain disabilities. Those are some of the stories that we are hearing in our country at the moment. What is going on? Send us an email this morning, gwalax@sabc.co.za, gwalax@sabc.co.za. But also we'll be taking messages at 34701, 34701. In a minute or two, I'll introduce you to my guests here on the program. But of course, first, let's look at this because child rights activists believe that the collapse of families and poverty have led to the increase in reported cases of violent cases of child abuse here in South Africa. This comes as the country is seeing an escalation in cases of abandoned, abused, and brutal murders of babies and children. This week alone, there's been reports of a stepfather accused of murdering his stepchild and keeping her body in a freezer. I mentioned that a short while ago. Also, a 19-year-old mother allegedly stabbing to death her own baby, among others. Tabile Mapanga compiled this report as part of Child Protection Week.
The country's children have become vulnerable and easy targets for abuse from strangers and in recent times, people close to them. This is according to Dr. Shahida Omar of the Teddy Bear Clinic for Abused Children, who says for many years there's been an inaccurate reflection of statistics and underreporting of cases of child abuse.
We are getting increased incidences of reports, and the reports that we are receiving are actually quite gruesome and brutal and quite violent, and one can attribute this to the culture of violence because, as we know, violence begets violence, and children are surrounded by domestic violence, and with the advent of technology, with cell phone usage, a lot of messages are circulated and actually desensitizes people to violent images as well.
Vincentia Dlamini Ngobese from Women and Men Against Child Abuse says it's not only the high number of cases of abuse that's worrisome, but it's the extent of the abuse inflicted on innocent children.
There are a lot of contributing factors that lead to these crimes being brutal. One, it's the state of mind. That means people are being psychologically unstable. There are factors around poverty, alcohol abuse and drug abuse, lack of life skills, lack of parental skills that will also contribute to the abuse of children.
Lucy Holborn of the Institute for Race Relations says there are deeper troubles in families as well as in parenting.
We know a huge number of children are very vulnerable simply because they're born into relatively unstable family environments. We know about half of all children have absent but living fathers. You know, we need to use Child Protection Week as a way to look at our family structures and look at the role we as parents are playing in our children's lives. Are we deciding when we have children responsibly? Are women empowered to make these decisions so that they can choose when and when not to have children?
Dr. Omar says families which are supposed to be the first source of protection for children are the ones inflicting pain. Children then fail to disclose as they assume blame and take responsibility for the abuse.
If it's intrafamilial abuse, there are also reasons for the disintegration of the family where children have been told that if they disclose, the family will fall apart and it will be all due to their disclosure and they will be blamed for that.
They say parents need support with parenting skills, especially those who've experienced abuse themselves, in order to stop the cycle of abuse. But what do children understand about their protection and safety?
What I know about is that you're supposed to feel protected by your parents or guidance or something. Not to be abused. Children must be treated the same way and should not be allowed to get out at night without adults, and so they cannot get kidnapped. That I can't answer because you don't know if you're safe or not. Yeah, I feel safe with my parents because they secure me.
Former President Nelson Mandela once said, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." If the current cases highlighted this week are anything to go by, South Africa is not doing very well. Tabile Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, then let me introduce my guests on the program. Starting in Pretoria, we have Brigadier Bafana Linda, Head of Operations, Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Violence. A very good morning to you, Brigadier.
Good morning, Kolane, and good morning to the listeners out there.
Thank you for your time. Also with me here in studio, Heidi Kutsia, National Manager, Organizational Development and Capacity Building at the Child Welfare South Africa. Heidi, a very good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Kolane, and good morning to all the listeners in South Africa. And if there are any of you listening abroad, welcome as well.
There certainly are a lot listening abroad as well. Nikki Stein is with Section 27, a public interest law center. She's a lawyer there. Good morning to you, Nikki. Good to see you again.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks indeed. Well, let me start with the Brigadier in Pretoria. Part of what we've heard there in the report that we've just played is the issue of reporting here. From the police's point of view, are we seeing an increase in the number of violent cases against children?
That's correct, Kolani. We are seeing an increase in the reporting of these cases since the re-establishment of the Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences units in the country.
Which was sometime last year?
That was done in 1st June 2010. But it was only launched on the 11th of October 2011.
Just give us an idea, though, of some of the cases that you're receiving.
We are seeing a lot of cases against young children. And mostly on the increase is the cases where perpetrators are also children. That means children against children.
But are you able to convict some of these people? Do we have enough evidence to take it through to the criminal justice system and convict those who are responsible?
Since the re-establishment, we are seeing an increase and improve on convictions, where we see number of life sentences being laid down in our courts.
But are you able to tell us as well whether this increase in reporting is as a result of increase in incidents, or is it simply because people are feeling a lot more comfortable reporting these matters?
As we know that since the restructuring of the FCS in August 2006, between that and 2010, we saw a decrease on that. And since the re-establishment of the units, then we are seeing an increase, which on the other side of the coin tells us that now the people are having confidence on the system.
But what about expertise within the unit itself? Because people have complained that perhaps we don't have necessary skills to deal with these young children when they come to report, including parents.
Kolani, the FCS units are not just ordinary detectives. They go through an extra training that sensitizes them on the issues of children, and interviewing skills also involved.
Nikki Stein, do you agree?
I think it very much depends on the individual that you're dealing with that's investigating a particular case. There are cases where the individual investigating officer does have the necessary expertise, does have the necessary sensitivity. Unfortunately, there are cases where that's not the case. Some of the cases we're dealing with, we've had frustrations such as insensitivity to gender. So a police officer, an investigating officer will not let a female be present in the room, or, me as an attorney for a child be present in the room while they're conducting the investigation and taking their statement. And I think that there is a lot of scope for increased sensitivity to the particular trauma that kids are going through.
But the re-establishment of these units, has it made a difference, do you think?
Again, I think yes and no. I think it's very difficult to generalize. Different areas work very differently. In our experience, I think it is beneficial to have these specialized units, but I don't think we can sit back and say, now that we have these, the work is done. I think the work is just beginning, and we need to constantly look at ways of improving these units, and of looking at how they can work together with other structures. For example, in the cases that we're working on in sexual violence in schools, how they can work together with the Department of Education to make the process a lot more efficient and a lot less traumatic for victims of abuse.
Just picking up on the cases that you're working on, what is your impression of the country's ability through legal means or any other structures that we may have to protect children? Do you think that we're dismal?
Dismal is the right word. I think, apart from the need to protect them, there's also the secondary victimization that these kids are going through. In many of our cases, it's taken teams of 5, 6, 7 lawyers, which it should not. These are processes that should not need an attorney, that should not need an advocate to deal with them. We're dealing with cases where learners who've been raped by teachers are simply just not believed because teachers have high standing in the communities that they come from, and whatever a learner may say and whatever evidence they may produce, it doesn't matter. We've got a couple of cases where there are criminal convictions of teachers of rape, and yet the relevant provincial departments of education have, for one reason or another, found that teacher's not guilty and allowed that teacher to return to work and to return to teaching children. And I think the biggest failure is the fact that we aren't talking to each other. The fact that, that the police are doing their thing and their investigation is going well or badly. The Department of Education is doing their thing and their investigation is going well or badly. They're separate processes which run parallel, so it increases the trauma to kids who are having to give statements on a number of occasions. And nobody's talking to each other and actually sharing their evidence and sharing their knowledge and making sure that, first of all, the perpetrator's brought to justice, and second of all, the child's given the necessary protection and support.
Heidi, let me bring you in. I mean, from the Child Welfare South Africa's point of view, is there any welfare to talk of? As we heard, of course, Nikki says we're dismal in this area. How would you characterize our performance so far?
Well, I know that when the old child protection units were around, it was going much, much better. And as you've rightly said, statistics has proven that it has gone down. And yes, I agree with Nikki that we are not performing well on this area. If I just think from our side as well, where children are brought to the courts and they actually denied their rights, especially when they're younger. They don't even have intermediaries that can interact on their behalf and that can make this whole system more, if ever appearing in court, can be more acceptable and more nicely. Yes, but they are being denied those rights because we just don't have enough resources, even though also from the social worker side of it. And I don't want to put down, I think it's a great thing that we have the FTS units that have now come about again, but they are under-resourced. I spoke last year during Child Protection Week with one of the ladies at FCS unit, and she said they just have too many cases. They are 3 in the unit and they just cannot keep up with all the cases that are coming about.
All right. Again, then it goes back to you, Brigadier Linda. You've heard what my two guests here have got to say.
Yes. What I would say here, since the re-establishment of the FCS units, we are in the building phase. And as we speak now, we have also co-opted the forensic social workers to fall under FCS unit, assist us with the assessment of the children. For me, we are in the building phase, but yes, it is a fact. The responsibility to protect children does not rest with the government alone. Parents, community also has a responsibility to play here. And furthermore, I also want to say that as well, that we need to have a holistic approach. All the role players should be communicating through each other as well and work as a team.
Yeah, which is what Nikki was pointing out, that people are working in silos, that you have departments doing their own thing, you have the units doing their own things, you have social workers and NGOs also doing their own thing.
I wouldn't fully agree with that statement of Nikki, reason being that we work together with the NPA, we work together with the NGOs, we work together with Teddy Bear clinics, so we are working with our partners. There is communication.
But that may be the case, but it becomes obvious that there is a failure within the criminal justice system, whether or not you're working together with the NPA, but there's a failure within the criminal justice system there, Brigadier Linda.
I wouldn't agree with that. The issue here, that we need not to point fingers, but we need to work together. Where there's a gap, we need to step in, and we don't have to have fans who are watching from the other side of the line. the lines of communication are open. Where there's a gap, there are some workshops that are being also in meetings that are always available for give us a platform to talk about these issues.
I think criminal justice is only one aspect of this whole process, and I think that's what we need to recognize. And if we don't start by recognizing that, then there's no way we're ever going to approach this truly holistically. I take the point that the police are working with the NPA, that they are working with NGOs, and that importantly there are policies in place that require them to do so. So that where we come across cases where they don't do so, at least we've got something to rely on. There are protocols in place. But invariably in all these cases, it's not just a matter of criminal justice. And particularly the cases that we're working on in schools, it's a Department of Education issue as well. And we need the police to be talking to the provincial education departments. We need the police to be talking to the South African Council for Educators. And we need those entities to be talking to the police as well.
And there's also an element of NGOs, perhaps if I can bring you in, Heidi, as well as social workers. What is the role of all those other players here?
Well, definitely, Kulani, if we look at what Child Protection Week actually comes from, where it says from the African proverb where it's taken from, it takes a village to raise a child.
Indeed.
And in your pre-clip that you also played, where the emphasis is on the families, and that is not just the core family, but the extended families as well, and our communities are also families. So yes, we definitely all need to play a part in the role of this in protecting our children, and we need to talk together. Yes, there are the forums, but if we really look at it, how effective are those forums, we as social workers also can only do so much. And yes, I must say, in certain areas we have where the police are really supporting us. When we have awareness campaigns, they are there, they are willing to do that. In some areas they are really working well with us. We can call them any time of the day. Even they call us as the social workers when they come upon a case, and we work together, we go to that, we investigate together. So yes, there are the people that are really working together, but unfortunately that is still a very, very small percentage out there. And if we really look in our rural areas, again, there also we find that the working together is not as good as what we really would like it to be.
A lot of emails have come through, by the way. You can send us yours at gwalax@sabc.co.za, gwalax@sabc.co.za. Also, give us a call this morning, 0891 104 208. Where is this missing link? What is the problem? Why can we not deal with these problems? 0891 104 208. SMS is at 34701. Let me read one or two emails before I go back then to my guests. Somebody says, one can only say that the society has lost Ubuntu, humanity. We have lost the sense of self-respect, respect of life itself. Lots of factors contribute to this. One, past plays a role, lack of self-respect, poverty, lack of education. That's Lindelani Mkhize on email. Another email came through from Chad Mercer, who says, this theory of domestic violence to me has a lot of problems. There are societies where violence is much more prevalent than in South Africa. Countries where women are not respected as much as they are here in South Africa. And yet those societies do not seem to have as much of a problem with violence involving children as we have here in this country. It could be a combination of factors, but whatever it is, it simply boils down to the failure of government to protect the nation's children. Disintegration of the family unit and the extended family mechanism is not unique to South Africa. That happens in other African societies too, but why do we have these problems here in this country? An interesting email coming through from Chad. Another one says, we are more interested in accumulating wealth, material wealth, than moral values. The law says fathers have rights to see their children, instead of stipulating that fathers must be there for their children. Absent fathers are the ones who are more likely to have children with different women. Most single mothers are taxpayers, who subsidize irresponsible fathers through social grants, while they too struggle to get maintenance from fathers of their children. Gogodi on email. Another email came through from is it Njabeni Pizza, who says, the kind of abuses we hear about and experience might well be indicators of the following challenges in our communities. One, angry communities, therefore angry nation overriding it. It might also be the anger overriding our human being. Njabeni Pizza. Right, I'll take more of your emails at gwalax@sabc.co.za. Archbishop Buyisile Weston says our country is now living under a curse because our leaders have left the laws of the Lord. Blasphemous laws begets the wrath of God. That's an email from Buyisile Weston in in relation to these matters. Lots of these coming through gwala@sabc.co.za. Let me just get a quick comment from Nikki. Earlier on also I wanted to ask you to give us examples of some of the work that you're doing and some of the cases of abuse that you're dealing with, so that people can have an idea of how bad things are. Because if you live in a secure environment, perhaps you don't even have an idea of what we're talking about.
Our work on child abuse focuses primarily on sexual violence within the school context. So that's rape or sexual assault of learners, either by their teachers or by other learners or by somebody else within the school system. So as I said earlier, it's obviously something that involves the criminal justice system as a crime. It also involves the Department of Education as a employment issue, and the struggles that we've had primarily come out of the fact that these entities are working in silos and that they are not talking to each other. I'll give you an example of a case that we've been working on. The case was initially reported to the Department of Education, which we didn't know about. It was about a month before it was reported to us. It was reported to us and we reported it to the Department of Education immediately. And this was about 4 months after the police had initiated their investigation. The Department of Education, although we had reported it to exactly the same people as the people who had received the report a month earlier, initiated a separate investigation. So the police had been to this family's house on a number of occasions. This was a girl who was threatened at knife point, kidnapped by her teacher, drugged and raped while she was unconscious, and then left at the side of the road near her house. The police had been there and decided that because she was not pregnant, there was no basis to carry on their investigation and withdrew the case. The Department of Education's first investigation is still carrying on. The second investigation culminated in a disciplinary hearing where they found that the delay between the incident, the rape, and the report by this learner meant that she was not telling the truth and that she had fabricated this whole story, and found the teacher not guilty. And, this is a case, it's very concerning, and we are still engaging with the department to find a solution to it. But it's this complete lack of communication. There's a J88 form which shows clear evidence of rape. There's statements by the learner and other witnesses that the police have in their docket. And unfortunately, it's a case where this man is very powerful and very influential. It's a small community. And he manages to do what he needs to do to get the case dropped against him. We've had to get a protection order for the learner and her family because he's trying to threaten them and intimidate them and get them to drop the case. And that protection order itself was a struggle. It's a process that should not take, as I said, it should not take attorneys.
All right. Well, just something perhaps linked to what's going on in schools with sexual abuse. Is a story on the front page of the Times today about pregnant kids in grade 3. There's a report compiled by the Department of Basic Education released earlier on this month. Some of the information there. In grade 3 alone, that's between 2009 2010, in grade 3 alone, about 109 pupils. Grade 3. In grade 3, you're about 9 years old. About 109 pupils fell pregnant in 2009 as against only 17 in the same grade in 2008. In grade 4, the number of these pupils increased to 107 from 69. Overall, the number in 2009, a total of 45,276 girls became pregnant. It's just, there's something wrong about this. This is probably the place where these children should be protected the most at school. So we'll take your calls then about some of these statistics. 0891 104 208.
The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
23 to 9, we're talking Child Protection Week here on the Forum at 8, and my guests seem to all agree that at this stage perhaps we are pretty dismal in this area, but what can we do then? Let's hear from you. 0891 104 208, 0891 104 208. I'm going to go to Brigadier Linda to respond to specifically what Nikki was saying, because it appears to me a straight case of bungling, for instance, and these cases you hear about over and over again, Brigadier.
In the police service, we have processes in place. We've got managers, and we are governed by the national instructions and also by policies that whosoever member fail to do his duty, he must be reported to the immediate commander. I would like to know what's the name of the police officer and which area that failed to open a case. For us as police officers, we don't have to decide whether the case whether it's acute or it's chronic. Our duty is to open up a case, even if it's an allegation. We have to investigate it. At the end of the investigation, then take it to prosecution, where they decide whether there is a prospect of prosecution or not. So the issues of corruption, we are having a zero tolerance on that. And the issues of members or complacent who don't want to work in the police services, we don't have such place in the police services. Our police officers are not legal advisors. They are there to receive the complaints from the community and do as they have been trained to do.
Here's another issue that I would like to bring up. The issue of the two, what do you call them, lists or registers, child protection registers. To what extent are they a problem to you, Brigadier Linda? Because some people have said through the 2005 Child Protection Act, we've got one, but we've also got another one now that came through in 2007 or something.
Unfortunately, Xolani, those two registers, the Department of Police Service is not the custodian. It's being kept by the Department of Social Development and also by the Department of Constitutional Development as well, Justice. So we are not a custodian ourselves. So
Heidi?
Yes, I know that the Department of Social Development, the Director General, is the custodian of it, but the Children's Act makes clear in the chapter on the child protection that the Director General or head of departments of the other departments, such like the police, on request, a written request, can have access to the information on the register, especially on the Part B of the register, which then indicates the name of the person that has committed the abuse against the child. Likewise, with the National Register for Sexual Offences, again, on applying for it and with proof of identity, one can get access to the information.
All right, let me read some emails. I'm going to come back to you, Nikki, for your view. But somebody says, hi there. In the olden days, the mobile clinics used to go to schools to prevent pregnancies, and parents were very strict those days. Why not now? That's Xolani Williams in Cape Town. Another one says, blame it on cell phones. Tando Gankos in Dennisville says, our children are constantly, even by parents and taxi drivers who smoke all the way to drop-off point. Another one from Centurion says, any man who cannot protect or take care of his child should not be called a father. Xolani in Cape Town, FCS units are mostly dominated by male police officials, whereas victims are females. How do they deal with this and deal with the exact details? Some Facebook posts, Mopale Di Soldati says, there's a correlation between these incidents and poverty. Poverty is the major cause. My wife and I are not working. We have 2 kids. Sometimes I wish I could kill them and myself. It hurts to see your wife and kids suffering. Please help. That's Mapelo Soldati. We'll probably just pass this on to the social workers. Heidi, perhaps you can just... Is there something?
I would gladly like to get the person's either the email address or the Facebook that we can distribute it in the area where our member organisation is to follow it up and render services to that family.
Sure. Mapelo will certainly be following up on this one. Ramatapa Mutao says there's a lot of talk in this country on many pressing issues and very less action taking place in cities. What about rural areas then, where these acts are almost accepted as a norm? I think communities should be supported to form forums, churches and many other groupings where they should be talking against these acts of abuse. Let's take some calls here. Reverend Sia in Midrand. Good morning to you, Reverend. Is the good Reverend on the line for us? Hello. All right, slight trouble.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Yes, morning to the listeners as well.
Yeah.
I just want to make a mention here. This is one of the very important matters that is being raised, which is obviously concerning our children and the future of our nation. We have a responsibility, of course, even from as faith people, to be able to speak out on these matters. Now, the issue is that our nation we have, in a way, we have left our foundations as a nation. If you look where we come from, as much as we have a history that is negative, but there are certain trends that one can observe. To say during that time, there was lesser of these kind of things that are happening in our nation today, because then people were more aware, I would say, of the fact that man is created in the image of God, and therefore we need to respect one another and honor one another. Today, that respect has been left, and we are all responsible. But I will also want to call on all the Christians to begin to rise up, and the church as a whole. There may be other religions that may be out there who may also want to participate in this. But what we see here, it's going to take the church to rise up and begin to deal with these matters, because until the church rises up and act on what is going on in our society, because the heart of man has left the foundations, things are really, really deteriorating bad. And we need to bring the heart of man back to where it was before.
All right, Reverend. I thank you very much. And I'm going to, let me just ask you one question, because there was an email that came through from Chad a little earlier on, and he suggested that, the evolution, if you want, that may be happening in this country and all the changes are happening elsewhere in the world, but they don't have the similar problems that we have. Why is it that in our country we see these horrible, horrible incidents involving our children?
As I said earlier, Xolani, is that until there is a change in the hearts have been so desperately, because of probably the people where they've come from and how the people's hearts have been so hurt and wounded. And there are many things that they can be contributed to that, whether politically or whatever. But I'm just talking about the state of the heart of man today, because of the wickedness that is just prevailing in our nation. And most of the time we turn a blind eye on these things. We don't talk about them and confront them. And if in the at the family level, parents are not taking responsibility, fathers in particular, taking responsibility to say, as a father, as a man, I want to play my role in protecting my children. When we grew up in the township, probably you can testify to that. In the township, you find that you, as a child, whether it's your neighbor or anyone in the community, they can be able to correct you as a child, and you are not afraid. This is where we have to get back to. Where there is honor, where there is fear and respect. Okay, Reverend, I thank you. Let's quickly go to Joe in Durban. Hello, Joe.
How are you?
I'm fine, Joe. Welcome.
All right. I regret having to speak about this topic, where a 9-year-old is being impregnated by a teacher. The numbers are alarming. It's I'm surprised listening to your
Okay, but to be fair, to be factual about it, it doesn't say that it was the teachers, but it just says the number of 9-year-olds who were impregnated in 2009. It doesn't say
besides whoever is doing such things. Even dogs understand that they have to wait for time, heat, and all that, and then they can follow the other dog. But for human beings to be doing such things, it's really alarming, and I believe our legal system is lacking badly. Such cases must not even be investigated while the perpetrator and the victim are watching each other every day. The perpetrator must be locked up, and the investigation must continue, because that is something that is even irrelevant to talk about here, while the whole nation is listening. It's horrible,
Joe, I agree. Joe is in Durban. Thank you very much for your call. I'll take more calls, by the way. 0891 104 208. KG in Bloemfontein. Hello.
Good morning, Xolani. How are you?
I'm very well. Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. Xolani, I think the biggest problem that we are sitting with is this situation of, I don't know to call it people not knowing what they are doing. I'm a police officer. Mm-hmm. I worked with the FCS for a period of 4 years. Mm-hmm. Now, when I started there, the standards of service delivery were sky high, with all the agencies that were involved, the police, the social workers, the nurses, and the prosecutors at court. Now we have a situation where the FCS is disbanded, and people are working, in isolation of each other. Now it is reinstated again. In Bloemfontein currently, if you take a victim of rape, if a woman is raped, say for argument's sake, 1,600 hours today, She will only get attended by a medical person tomorrow morning, because there is no service after our service. I don't know what is happening. The nurses pull out or whatever is going on. You understand? So imagine if a woman is raped and she must sit and not bath herself and stuff like that for almost 12 hours waiting to be attended the following day. I think that is out of order. So, in my own opinion, what needs to happen is, if we establish best practices, we must stick with those and refrain from this habit of if a new person comes in tomorrow, he's coming with his own tricks now, changing stuff with no good reason. And the other thing is this: we are having a situation where commanders, a person is put in charge after 6 months on the job. There's somebody new coming in all the time. I know for sure. In my area today, if you can conduct a survey in all the different what you call police stations, there's no station commander who's been in his or her post for longer than 18 months. They chop and change all the time. Detective commanders, that is a situation. So you have a situation where somebody's coming in while that person is now getting in the field of things, to say there's a direction that I want to move to. Now somebody else comes in, So the system collapses from time to time because of stuff like that.
Okay.
And lastly, the quality of the detectives we have. I think we need to have the what they call in English seasoned detectives. You understand? I mean, if you are a detective in a case, and you give the victim in a case that you are handling, you give him your office number. If he sees the person who has raped her or him, I think that person needs to get to communicate with the investigating officer, promptly, lightning speed, so that person can react quickly and go and apprehend the suspect.
Yeah.
You understand? So some detectives, they are not happy giving their own personal cell phones to victims. You understand? And that also poses this thing a problem. And the last thing is understaffed. I left that unit because I couldn't cope with the workload anymore. You understand? And I am quite aware that the outcome of a trial in court 5 years down the line, or 4 years down the line after the docket was opened, rests heavily on the shoulders of the person who is investigating that particular docket. If you do slope investigations, then there's no way that that court, when the case when it comes to court, and there's advocates and the magistrates and there's everybody involved there, it can stand the test that is required to secure a proper conviction, so that the person, when the person is found guilty, he is able to stand and stay in prison, despite if he can lodge an appeal or stuff like that. You understand? As you can see, the case that is happening within the northwest of the late Eugene Trablanche. You understand? If there's a problem somewhere, then when you get to court, the whole hard work that was put into the case collapses.
Okay. KG, I really thank you very much for sharing those experiences. Brigadier Linda?
Xolani, I hear my colleague over there in Free State. Yes, when we had the best practices before the FCS was restructured, we were working very well, and that has dented us. I won't deny that. When the units were restructured, we had to start from scratch again, and we have to start from scratch to develop those communication channels. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that we will get back where we were, and FCS will be the cream of the crop. And we are optimistic that if we work holistically on these matters, we will succeed. But we need to have all our role players playing. And thanks also to Reverend Sia to mention that the church also need to get involved. Because
but just going back to what KG is saying in Bloom, the picture that he has painted for me is a picture of a system that's breaking down, a system that really just is buckling under the pressure.
I wouldn't agree with KG, because KG is looking at Free State in the area where he is. He is talking generally on the issues of the station commanders, is also touching on the issues of detectives, also touching on the issues of specialized units. So myself, as far as I know, with a specialized unit, we are building up and we are beefing up those units to have the capacity to deal all the cases.
But people like him who clearly have skill and capacity left because they're understaffed, because of the workload.
The issue is here, yes, working at the FCS unit is not just a career, but it's also a calling. So a person has to be a person who's dedicated and have passion. Myself, I'm there because I have passion. I've been working with these units for more than 15 years, and I don't foresee any problem. Challenges in terms of staffing, we are dealing with those issues.
But what it is at the moment, and this is what my guest a little earlier on pointed out, is that, as he says, he makes an example, if there were somebody to be raped in his area, at 1 o'clock they'll only see a doctor tomorrow because there is absolutely no coordination, there is no working together.
Within the provinces, I've as the Section Head of Operations, I travel around the country. I had these issues, and we have said to the people that they have to raise these issues. There are some joints, forums, which are at the provincial level and also at the cluster level, that they must raise those issues within those cluster levels. I'm not hearing any attempt from KG that these forums were utilized, because it's where all other stakeholders, health, police, DSD also come together. These are issues which must be reported there. If people are sitting in isolation, they come across problems and they don't raise them in the proper forums, then it becomes a problem.
Heidi, you were listening to KG.
Yes, I was listening there. I think we know that the fact is in South Africa there are certain of our areas where we are grossly understaffed, where we have a shortage of human resources. One of the areas is definitely the police, another one is definitely our health services, and another one is definitely with our social workers. And yes, at this point in time, we also need to look after our people that are working for us. We cannot flock a horse to death, because otherwise we don't have a horse that's going to carry us wherever or going to do the ploughing for us. So we actually need to take care of our workers. And I think that is what is very important. But even if we look at the unemployment rate in South Africa, that has fallen in the previous quarter or risen over 25%, which is alarming. For me, is that what we're going to do about this? Can we not get through the public works program, volunteers in, train them as we are doing with our Asibavikele program, which is the Let's Protect Them, where we have volunteers in the community that are helping us to be the eye out there in the community, to report to this, to do group work with certain of our programs that we are doing where we want to address these issues.
Okay. Nikki, you're going to comment in a second, but you remember that Heidi was talking about listeners from all over the world. There's a caller now from Japan. Aloysius, good morning to you.
Good morning, Polani.
Hi, welcome.
Good morning to your guests and listeners.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking whether there is anything we can do in South Africa to discourage cohabitation and encourage people to get married before they start having families. Because when families are disjointed, these problems really naturally will scoop up. Because I'm in a different society. Somehow, some of the problems we have in South Africa, they have it here, but there is a way they do it to avoid the kind of situation we are in South Africa, which gives rise to dysfunctional people. When the children are dysfunctional and they grow up in that situation, they become dysfunctional adults. Because here, you find a lot of people, a lot of couples, who do not have anything to do with each other anymore, but you still see them come because of the children. They are sacrificing to cohabit, to stay under the same roof. And when you ask them, they said it's just for the sake of the children, that I don't have anything with him or with her anymore, but I'm just staying under this roof because of the children, for them not to be dysfunctional children and for them not to be dysfunctional adults. Secondly, an average of a South African lady, more especially the young ones who are growing up with better jobs, sometimes you tend to hear from these ladies that I don't want to get married, I have my job, I have my house, I have my car, I just want to have children. I don't want to get married. I don't want any man to control me. Then, in future, when this job is no longer there, who tends to suffer it? The children that were born out of, wedlock. The father is no more there. Then they tend to suffer. Unlike when two people are living together, if one doesn't have it, the other one has it, then they can make up.
Okay. Aloysius, I thank you very much in Japan with those comments. Thanks indeed for calling. Let me get you, Nick, to respond to what you've heard so far and wrap up for me, if you may, please.
Sure. I want to just pick up on the human resources issue. And I think we need to emphasize that the difficulties that all of us are facing are not focused on particular individuals. It's a focus on the system. And I think that includes the fact that the system doesn't adequately cater for these cases. Courts are supposed to be open after hours for domestic violence cases, and we've approached a court for a protection order after hours on a Friday evening, and there has been no one there and no phone number to call. And I think it's the same in all aspects. In victims of rape and sexual assaults waiting to be seen by a doctor, and it's not shifting any blame onto the doctor, it's shifting blame onto the system. And I think we need to actually start talking to each other, look at what the needs are, look at what the objectives are that we're trying to achieve, and try to come up with some kind of system that would adequately protect victims and workers who are working to assist the victims, and effectively get perpetrators brought to justice.
Let me wrap up with a couple of emails as well. There's Anonymous who says, I must say that one of the problems in our country that leads to the above is that, meaning of course the issue of child abuse, is that children are being born in great numbers in order to get the child grant from government. This system is totally unsustainable because there are more grants being paid out than there are taxpayers, as much as twice as many. We must get back to a system where both parents are responsible for bringing their children up, and not just a single parent, which is usually the unemployed mother. Anonymous on email. Mzisi Pengu says, I didn't even know that a 9-year-old can get pregnant. And this is, of course, the story on the front page of the Times today. This is a disgrace, and those people are supposed to be handling these matters are not taking any responsibility. If we want change in this country, we have to change the leadership. That's Mzisi Pengu in Pinetown. Another email, as long as the Department of Social Development does not employ the 900 social workers in the Eastern Cape, this problem of child neglect and abuse will not be reduced. Lots of emails came through. Unfortunately, can't go through each and every one of them, but we thank you very much for participating. Thanks indeed also to my guests who came through for us this morning. Brigadier Bafana Linda, Head of Operations, Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Violence, joining us in our Pretoria studios. Here with me, Heidi Kutsia, National Manager, Organizational Development and Capacity Building, Child Welfare South Africa, as well as Nikki Stein of the Section 27, an attorney with Section 27, which is a public interest law center. Thank you all for coming through this morning. Right then, thanks indeed as well for listening to our program. Thanks to our team of producers, Mesho Shandlale, Wisane Makubele, Bongi Mukhale, technical producer Mark Prela, senior producers Lungile Mabaso and Chili Dichibase, Forum at 8 producer Jake Mukoma, chief producer Boots Lukoto, executive producers Obrese Chia and Bosi Chane. I'm Olani Gwala, back again for you 6 to 9 tomorrow. You have a great day ahead. It's 9 o'clock. Ahead 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 it's